When I stopped looking at money as something that was scarce, that I had to, and started having this abundance mindset, it's amazing how things just kind of happen. You can't serve two masters.
Millions of American families.
And then they came up, it's a word that they came up
Hello, and welcome to the Missing Piece podcast. This is episode 16. My name is Danielle Griffiths. I am here with my favorite and delightful co-host, Brooke Benevento. How's it going today, Brooke?
Doing fantastic. I'm excited for this episode. I'm really excited for this episode. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
I hope so. It's fascinating for me. You know, my background is in education and insurance and finance, and I'm kind of, what I'm doing now is kind of mirroring those two and working with families and you work with families also. So what we're going to be talking about today is financial literacy, which may not seem like a sexy topic, but, money's good for paying bills. And when I was researching this episode, I was fascinated at some of the stats about financial literacy and how many people are living paycheck to paycheck. So I know it's been on our heart. Both Brooke and I want to help people. That is our primary goal with this podcast, with our careers. We want to help people. And so what we're going to do today is talk about financial literacy. We're going to try to keep it nice and concise. And then Brooke's going to bring in some of the mindset stuff. And I can attest to what she says because I used to have a mindset that was not a growth mindset, not an abundance mindset. And she's really taught me how to change that line of thought. And it's been, I know I say it a lot, it's life-changing. It has literally changed my life. I did find in my research that the number one stress of people is finances. And so if we can help alleviate that stress, give you some information, maybe some action items, it's going to be a successful podcast. So you ready to rock and roll, my friend?
I'm ready to rock and roll, and I'm ready to hear about all this history and all about finances because you are an expert in this, the financial world right now, and you're moving into this with families and things like that. So I'm super excited to also, work with you with families to teach about money because it's so important, and even in marriages, this is important. So you all listen up, and if you have a pen and paper, definitely have one close because you might want to write some of this down. So let's dive in, and Danielle, start telling us about some history of the financial world.
Sure. And, I always like to start off with definitions. We got to agree with, what we're talking about. So financial literacy is the possession of knowledge, skills, and confidence required to make informed and effective money management decisions. So to simplify that, it's knowing how to deal with money and how to plan so that financial stress is not taking over your life. And I have definitely been there. I've been in situations where I didn't even have a full dollar in my bank account to take out. I've been in situations where my electricity was supposed to be turned off. I needed to, we've all been there. I think we look at people sometimes and we think, oh, they're lucky, or, they just kind of fell into that. No, most of us have struggled big time at one point in our lives. And so just understanding, what financial literacy is. And the concept of this actually does go back to colonial times. Benjamin Franklin, who was not a president. We talk about, Benjamin's $100 bills. He was not a president of our nation, but he was one of the founding fathers. And you've probably heard one version of his sayings. He used to say, "A penny saved is 2 pence clear," which, in modern times, we would say something to the effect of "a penny saved is a penny earned." And so even back then in his Poor Richard's Almanac, he would include tips on how to save money and how to have a life that was not, what we would call paycheck to paycheck now, where you're constantly stressed about paying your bills. And I mean, if you look at the last 250 years of our nation, there's not a lot of systemic financial literacy. In fact, it wasn't until 1914 there was something called the Smith-Lever Act, which did establish financial education for university students. But I've always wondered, why are we waiting till they're in college? I think financial literacy, right? Like it should start in preschool, kindergarten. This is what it means to spend. This is what it means to save. And so just the fact, and it is a fact, that most K through 12 education systems, it's actually starting to change. I did find that out in my research. But as of right now, in 2026, less than half of the states in our nation have a dedicated financial literacy program in K through 12. Wow. So I thought that was interesting. Wow. And, question for you, Brooke. One of the things you've taught me about Napoleon Hill, we talk about the 6 fears that really get people off course. I memorized them real quickly. So poverty, loss of love, criticism, illness, old age, and death. And poverty, I don't care. I mean, I think even billionaires worry that they're going to be wiped out. I mean, anyone who's been an entrepreneur like we both have, we know, and this is one of my big beefs with government. If the government makes a mistake, they just tax us more, right? If a private corporation or a private entrepreneur makes a mistake, they could lose everything. So what would you say for people, and most people I know, regardless of their tax status or their how much taxes they pay, is dealing with some kind of financial stress. So what would you say to people who are listening to this and they're saying, yes, I feel that stress and I don't want that to consume my being, so to speak?
Yeah. So so we have to go back again to social heredity, right? And so we may have witnessed growing up some of your parents saying or doing some things that would eventually make it to be your belief system around money, right? So let's break it down, because I want people to be able to say, yes, this is me, or this is not me, right? Do I do even one or two of these things that I can change so that I'm not continuously living in this poverty mentality? So things that you might experience would be indecision or overthinking about things in your life. You procrastinate instead of taking action because you're fearful of losing money or maybe not having enough. You start to doubt your abilities in what you do. You're settling for less. Failure seems like it's just too risky, right? To take action on anything. Worrying excessively about what others think about you is also a form of poverty. Avoiding investments in yourself or your business because, again, you're gonna fear that you might lose all your money. And so also some people may say, oh, well, Brooke, I don't think that way, or that's not me. And so what I do want to add to this a little bit here is that I want to give you some sentences or some words that you may find yourself saying, or maybe you can even look back and see maybe that your mother, or your father, or maybe your grandparents, right? You find them saying these things. And so again, if we're raised in an environment like this, you subconsciously may have some of this stuff inside your subconscious mind, and you're living through that, then you have to identify it and get rid of it so that you can stop living in poverty and live in abundance. It's a whole process. But some things, so let's go over some sentences you might say. Right. I can't afford that, or I'll never be able to afford that. People like me don't get very many opportunities. I'll never make enough money. Rich people are just lucky. I'm too old to start over. There's no point in even trying. If someone else wins, that's less for me. I'll do it when I have more money. That's a huge one. Well, I don't have the money to do it. And I always say, well, do you have a skill? Do you have a computer? Do you have a car? Well, then you have enough to get started. Nothing works out for me. I'm just trying to survive right now, right? And so these are things that we can identify if that we have this poverty mentality. Now, again, we could go back to other episodes where I say, whatever you think about, okay, comes out into your reality. So if you're saying, I can't afford that, or I live in, poverty, or I'll never be able to afford that, then what happens? You continuously see what you're thinking about in your environment. So some things that you can do on how, now I want to give you some ways to conquer this, because as we move forward in this, Danielle's going to give you some more stuff, but I really want to work on your mind, because as we say, everything we think about and all the words that we use are literally becoming our reality. So you have to follow these instructions, and I'm going to give you 7 things to follow that you can do to really switch this poverty mentality. Now, it does take a little bit of time, because you have to, introduce these things to your subconscious mind, and it takes a little bit of time to pick these things up. So number 1 will be decide on a definite purpose. Like, okay, what do you want, right? Like, write it down. Start to create a plan, or take just small actions, right, to get towards what you want to do. You need to also be practicing. The third one will be practice faith through repetition. So read your goals, have affirmations, read these morning and night. Your subconscious mind has to accept all of this in order to see it come out into your reality. This is a huge one. Number 4, surround yourself with growth-minded people, right? So Danielle and I, we are growth-minded people. We're forward thinking. We don't say, oh, well, this podcast is never going to work. No, we're just saying, okay, this is our goals. This is what we were just before this, we were talking about what our goals were for this podcast and what we were hoping to see, in the next few months. And so, you're always, the thinking about, looking forward. Number 5, replace scarcity thinking with abundance thinking. Same, creating value for other people's. Don't try to obsess over the lack of things. Number 6, make decisions promptly and stick to them. If you say, hey, I'm going to do this, follow through and do the thing, because 100% of the time, God, universe has given you an idea to forward think you. And if you don't do that, then you're just continuously sitting there idling. And then number 7, refuse to let setbacks define you. Failure is only feedback, and it's an opportunity to gain knowledge. So I always say something my mentor says from Think and Grow Rich Institute is adversity is a great thing, because if you're not being pushed, or you're not feeling like something is pushing you to grow, then you're just going to continue to stay stagnant, because without failure, without adversity, you cannot learn. So if you want to grow, be prepared that you're going to have some adversity in your life. Like Danielle and I were talking this morning. She's like, my printer wasn't working, and this happened and this happened. I was like, oh, and she's like, all right, God, thanks for the adversity. Like, I'm pushing through. Right. But see, that's the difference, now. Right? Yeah. Like, that's the difference. It's like, okay, well, all of this seems to be, failing around me, but it's like, no, it's not failing. It's just teaching me. It's teaching me to push through all the adversity. Even something simple as, my printer's not working. Well, okay, how am I responding to my printer not working? Am I blowing up? Am I getting angry? Am I running around with my head on fire? Or I'm just like, okay, God, like, all right, just take a deep breath. Let's figure this out. So, that's a growth mindset. I mean, that just in a nutshell, something so simple like that was like, Danielle's like, my printer wasn't working, but I was like, okay, figuring it out, and so somebody else might have a different perspective of that and get really fired up and then say, hey, my whole day is ruined. But we don't let that happen. We just understand that this is just a challenge, and it's challenging me really as a person to be better, every day, and how I'm showing up. So, for me, if you do have a poverty mentality, I would say now that you can probably recognize it. And I will tell you that 98% of the people in the world do have this. And it is because of how we were raised. And don't get me wrong, there's still thoughts that creep up in my mind sometimes. And I have to say, nope, that's not the world I live in, go away. And this is normal. But the more awareness, like we always say, the more awareness we have, the more that we can change it. So that is in a nutshell. Yes, that's the mindset portion. I want to hear more about, Danielle's going to go over more about some other things that we want to talk about that's going into the world. So
And just to put a bow on what you were saying, the surround yourself with growth-minded people, that's huge. My parents used to always say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And even now, if you're hanging out with people, it's almost like I know we've talked about this before, the victor versus the victim mentality. And it doesn't matter your situation, how much money you make, whatever the case is, if you are constantly blaming others for your situation, that creates the opposite of what we want. We want, to take responsibility, to realize that you do have the power to co-create with source, with God, with infinite intelligence. And so wanted to mention that. But yeah, talking about finances, and it makes me wonder, if I put my tinfoil hat on, it makes me wonder how much of the lack of financial literacy is on purpose. Because when you have a system like ours, where I've heard it referred to as debt slavery, we are in this constant world of debt and mortgages and car loans and student loans and the interest rates. I saw a credit card the other day that had an interest rate of 28%. And again, if you and your family feel like you're in a situation where you need some guidance, let me know. You can email me. I'd love to reach out and talk to you about how we might be able to help you. But again, that mindset. So before 1913, our entire government ran on tariff revenue. And one of the fascinating things about what we're witnessing right now, the last year, 14 months, has been the media just losing their mind about tariffs. And I mean, I could go into this tangent. I'm going to try really hard to keep it concise. But basically, tariffs are when we charge other countries to import their goods to the United States. It's important for a bunch of reasons, but one of the primary ones is it's important to protect domestic industry. We have certain standards here in our nation where we pay people minimum wage. We have workman's comp. We have benefits in certain situations. And so it is expensive to run a company in the United States of America. And when NAFTA was passed, you and I were in high school, or I'm a little older. I think it was 1994. NAFTA was passed, North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement, I believe is the acronym. And it basically removed trade barriers between us and Mexico and us and Canada. And what we saw were companies are not stupid. You don't get to be a millionaire or a billionaire and not have good ideas. But we started to see manufacturing moved overseas. We started to see even Hollywood. I was in Hollywood at the time in the early 2000s. We started to see things migrating out of California, being filmed in Canada, being filmed in Georgia, being filmed because it was cheaper. If you can move your base of operation, a couple miles across a border, and all of a sudden you don't have to pay a minimum wage. You don't have standards of like caution and safety that we have here. And so it's really fascinating to me to watch so many people attack tariffs when for the first century plus, our nation ran on tariffs. Now that's going to change in 1913 with the passage of the 16th Amendment, which established income tax. And again, this is allegedly, I like to say allegedly because it is, could get me into trouble. But there was a very famous man named J.P. Morgan. You might know him from J.P. Morgan Chase. And he was one of the very wealthy Americans that was actually pushing for the creation of a Federal Reserve. So before 1913, we didn't have a Federal Reserve. And there were several other multi-millionaires. Among them, let's see, Isidore Strauss, J.J. Astor, who was the richest person on earth at the time, Benjamin Guggenheim. They were actually in Europe they were going to come back to the United States to argue against the Federal Reserve. And some people might be out there saying, okay, this sounds familiar. At the last minute, JP Morgan was supposed to come over with them. He canceled his trip, and all three of those men actually perished in the North Atlantic on the Titanic. So that was the year before all this happened, but it keeps coming up as a possible motive for something a little more nefarious. And again, That's alleged. This is for entertainment purposes only.
Purposes only.
But
Exactly.
I mention that because the Federal Reserve was supposed to help calm everything down. And this gets back to financial literacy, because if we don't understand the system that we operate out of, it is very easy to be taken advantage. And so I wanted to mention that. Couple stats real quick. 66% of American adults live paycheck to paycheck. That's a lot. And also what's crazy is that's up 10% just in the last 3 years. So it used to be barely over half. Now it's 2/3 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 29% of Americans, this one shocked me, but I've been in this situation, so it didn't shock me that much. 29% of Americans have more credit card debt than they do emergency savings. And that's according to a bank rate survey. And last little tidbit is only 47% of Americans, so less than half, report having at least $1,000 in savings that they could readily access to cover an emergency expense. And we know that things come up. Car repairs, a bill that was higher than we expected. I've got 2 kids in college. I mean, life is very, very expensive. But I do feel with the right mindset and the right training, it doesn't have to be. So,
I mean, even $1,000 is some people's deductible on their cars if they just get in a car accident, you know?
It is mine.
So, So really learning how to, and I think something that, well, you know, Napoleon Hill talks about is, you know, are you letting money take over your life? Or are you, you know, taking care of your money? So I think that this is something that, and, you know, we can blame the schools really quickly on this and be like, well, why aren't they teaching this in school? Right. Which should really be the place to teach it. And I only say this because not every parent knows how to be financial literate. They're not, you know, so if parents don't know, and this is the problem, is that social heredity, we have become a society where our children have watched us just swipe a card. And they don't understand the back side of that card. I remember one time one of my kids saying, you know, I said something like, you know, we can't get that today. You know, we have to wait until, you know, next week or whatever to get that. And they would say, well, just swipe a card, just swipe the card, Mom, or just write one of those
Use
paper checks that you do. Yeah. Right. And so we're not educating our children. And a lot of times it's because us as adults, I mean, we've never been taught, or we don't, if we don't know, how are we supposed to teach our kids how to respect money and how to use it and how to, I think also invest it, right? Like you go online or you go here and everybody's telling you all these different things and nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows how to get a leg up because they're asking sometimes, and something that my mentor also says is never go to a poor person for advice about money. You know, if a poor person is telling you what to do, or somebody with a bunch of credit is telling you what to do and can't pay their bills, don't ask them for advice on how to save money or how to become rich, right? Because, or how to become wealthy, because I'm telling you, they don't know. On the outside, it may look like they're rich. You know, they have boats and cars and all these things. And I would like to ask them, if you sleep at night, great. But if you don't have peace in your life, then you're going to be very unhappy, right? And that is part of the missing piece, is that, you know, we tend to want to look at our neighbors and say, well, look at everything he has, you know, and you know, Jesus said real quick, don't look at your neighbors. Don't look at what they have. It doesn't mean that they have all these things. They have all this money in the bank, because a lot of the richest people in the world actually don't look rich. I don't know if you all know that, but that's actually fact, that a lot of people that have money don't. Yeah. You look at them and you're thinking, what? Like, and then you find out later they were a millionaire and you're thinking, what? Like, they didn't even act like a millionaire. They didn't even look like a millionaire, you know? So looks can be very deceiving in a world where people are trying to keep up. So yes, you know, and I think something else too that I've learned along the way is that, you know, your mind is a very strong It's like a computer. It's a muscle, right? So keep telling yourself, I am wealthy. I'm wealthy. And you will find that you are wealthy in a lot of different ways, even in not just money, right? But you'll start to point out all the ways that you're wealthy. Love, friends,
health,
health. Yeah. I mean, these are really the most important things in life. Yes, we all need money, but we need to learn how to utilize it and how to conquer it and how to take control of it for ourselves.
I totally agree. And I remember, I'm very grateful. My parents were excellent at that. I didn't always listen. And that's my mea culpa, but they were very good. I remember when I was young, if I wanted something like a pair of jeans, my mom, my dad would say, okay, well, we'll split it with you. And then I had to decide if that $80 pair of jeans was worth me saving up and getting half. And you know what? Sometimes it wasn't, but it taught me it's just not automatic. You don't just get whatever you want. I remember saying one time, that's not fair. And my dad's like, who told you life was fair? It's not.
Yeah.
But the mindset. But again, I also, despite having good, strong social heredity when it came to financial literacy, I still made mistakes. I got into credit card debt like crazy at a Dodger game because they were giving out a free t-shirt that probably could have costed me $7. But if I signed up for this credit card and I was over 18, so, and all of a sudden I was like, is this how it feels to be rich? I remember I bought a leather jacket. I bought a bottle of perfume, and not understanding, because I was a stupid teenager, that the bill was going to go to my home address, and it was not good. But I guess my purpose in sharing that story is you can have a good awareness and education of financial literacy and still make huge mistakes. Mistakes.
True. Very true. We can get very lost in it sometimes. Yeah.
Right. And I like how you're talking about the relationship with money, because I'm going to mention a couple kind of pillars of financial literacy. But if you worship money like it's a god, what's the saying? You can't serve two masters. When I stopped looking at money as something that was scarce, that I had to, and started having this abundance mindset, it's amazing how things just kind of happen. But you have to have that and some financial literacy. So here's just 4 really basic ones. I got these from Fidelity and Investopedia, if anyone's curious. So budgeting. A lot of people don't budget. And they just, they're very reactive. Bill comes, they pay it. They don't shop their insurance. They don't shop their wireless. So budgeting is huge. Saving and investing. And I know it can feel like when you're in the midst of financial stress that you're not able to save, believe me. But I also remember... Yes. And I remember thinking, I have no money, but I would spend $8 to $10 at Starbucks every single morning. Yep. I have no money, but I'm spending $25 at lunch when I could make a sandwich that cost me next to nothing. So that just that mindset is huge. Managing debt, understanding that running up a credit card and paying just the minimum. And again, this is something I work with families. I teach them about the rule of 72. I teach them about, how money works. If you're not managing debt, the debt will manage you. And you will get to a point where I was many moons ago, where I was paying thousands of dollars a month, and those balances were not going down because of the interest. The last one would be financial protection, just knowing how to safeguard yourself. Once you start building those assets, you need to make sure you have insurance. You need to have life insurance if you have loved ones that, knock on wood, heaven forbid something were to happen, what would happen to your family? And that's a lot. I didn't think about that when I was younger. I obviously do now, but so there is a lot. I mean, we have the world at our fingertips right now. I know one of my kids was following like an investing for teens Instagram, and they were telling me what they were doing. I'm like, that's brilliant. So we're not 100 years ago where you had to have access to a really smart person or a university or a library. we have the ability. It's just, is this going to be a priority? The last thing I wanted to mention, and again, it hurts my heart to think that there are people out there that think like this, but there's something called the Cloward-Piven strategy. And this was created by two Democrat socialists. I believe one of them is still alive and the other one passed away a few years ago. But it pushes the idea that if we overload our system, overload our welfare system, SNAP benefits, Social Security, housing, if we overwhelm it to the point where we are pushing to put people on the government dole, AKA putting people where they're dependent on the government, that the cry for change and help will lead to what I can only describe as socialism or communism, pushing for things like a universal basic income. And again, I'm a historian. I look at patterns. I can go back to the origins of Jamestown in Virginia in 1607. They found out real quick some people didn't want to work. So they made a rule, he who does not work does not eat. And thinking back to John F. Kennedy, our president, who unfortunately was assassinated in November of 1963, he very famously said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." We have to get back to that type of mentality, because otherwise we're begging for the government to take more control of our lives, I guess would be the way that I would explain it. But I mean, let's start this in kindergarten, right? Let's teach the American dream.
Yeah. How to save and not spend so much. Yeah. And I think going back to the basics and, something too, I mean, when I go into families, it's like it is a subject that comes up, and how are your finances? Who makes sure that the bills are paid? Does the husband even know what's going on? And if they don't know what's going on, we need to get them on the same page, and this is exactly where you come in too, because when we go into families, there's so many dynamics, and I'm only a piece of that, and so really to bring peace to a family, it is to get their finances situated too, and to understand, hey, this is what's going on. And if you want to start saving money, I mean, you got to talk to Danielle, because, she's the one that's going to help you get to where you want to go, and to really be able to sleep at night and to have peace and knowing that, okay, we're saving, we're going in the direction that we need to be going. So this is financial literacy, you guys, is not only for, retirement, but it's for actual like living right now, to have peace of mind. Yeah. Right now. Yes. We need to save for retirement and all these things, but we want you to be in a place of peace of mind now, so that your health isn't, being, torn apart, and your mind isn't being torn apart. Like we want to get you guys to a place where you're completely at peace. And first it's the mind. And I would say probably a couple steps after that is your finances, especially if you're a married couple. So I'm going to definitely tell you that if you are struggling, and I'm going to give Danielle a little kick here. I'm telling you, if you are struggling with money, you need to reach out to somebody that can really help you. And if you don't know anybody, reach out to Danielle. She's happy to help. Yeah. And if she can't, and if she can't help you, she has a whole team of people that can, and in her wheelhouse. So yeah, if you are struggling financially, having 28% on your credit card bills, like, you guys, we can wrap this up so much faster if you guys, if you need help. And we just don't want we want to get back to, like Danielle said, to the basics, to, really having that, I think, American dream. We're going on 250th year here. And I don't know if you're younger, you may not know what the American dream is, but it was something that was, I think, sold to us for a very long time. And, but we really can get back to that American dream of, having a home and having a car, and maybe letting your spouse stay home with your kids, and, really just living that happy, peaceful life. So yeah, and I've enjoyed this. I've learned so much. I've learned so much today too. So thank you for that.
Of course. And I think just to kind of, again, wrap this up, I used to think you only work with a financial professional if you have all this money. That's not what my organization does. We have a goal to help 20 million families, whether, you make minimum wage and don't have two nickels to rub together, or we have clients that are millionaires and everything in between. Reach out. I'd love to talk to you. There's no cost. What we offer is free. And if it's something that you want to discuss, let us know. But as always, we really appreciate you joining us here on The Missing Piece. We really are enjoying this journey and hearing from people. And every day it feels like Brooke or I hear from someone who learned something from this podcast and it's helping their lives. And that is the most exciting thing. So we hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us. Please like, share, subscribe, and we'd love to hear from you. So have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, y'all.